What up? So GGG nerfed the Vaal Temple, people are upset about it, but we're feeling too blessed to be stressed or something like that. Yeah, we've got 3 alternative strategies that you can run to make some serious bank. They all work together in tandem and you can do them in addition to or instead of the temple. Some of the strategies in this video are things we have gone over in more detail previously, but some things have changed, we have some updates, and we're kind of trying to tie several smaller strategies all together into a full-on coherent farm setup. Now before we jump into it, help us out with that YouTube busy work, like, subscribe, and hype the video if you're on mobile. These all tell YouTube to show our content to more people, which helps us keep doing this. Alright, so let's start with the temple nerfs. So hotfix 13, apparently according to Reddit, it's the worst thing to ever happen in a video game of all time. GGG did a lot to the temple. They added a diminishing returns to the rooms. They also made it so that this guy's medallion can only be placed on tier 3 rooms. This is the anti-destabilization medallion. People were using this at the end of snakes to prevent the snake from whatever, being dematerialized, right? And so there's just a lot of stuff going on here that they basically just made it so that anybody who was in the process of setting up a snake temple no longer could, essentially. Whereas people who still had a fully set up snake temple, in a lot of cases, were basically fine, although swapping the golem works and spy master rooms definitely caused some problems with that for some people. Ultimately, this felt like a bad decision that was getting a lot of justifiable hate, and then also a lot of over-the-top declarations that the game is completely dead forever. So then, a day later, they rolled out this hotfix, reducing the number of rooms being destabilized. And this hasn't really fixed it for people. Ultimately, their goal here is to make it so that you can have a stable size of around 60 rooms, which is massive, as opposed to the roughly 40 rooms from before. The biggest problem with the temple is that it requires a ton of setup to be profitable. It's not obvious how it works, and it's character specific, right? So you are punished for playing new builds. We're strongly anti-cringe, and setting up a new temple is boring and lame. It's just not worth it, no matter how many divines it generates for us, and it just made us want to look at farm strats that aren't the temple at all. And as it turns out, there are a ton of profitable farm strats that don't even require thinking about the temple. That's not to say that you can't also do the temple. We are kind of trying to map quickly, so you can absolutely do the temple, but you don't have to. So let's talk about the strategies. We really have 3 here that we're going to be talking about in this video. The first is hunting corrupted areas, cleansing them, and farming all the leftover maps with juiced up breaches. So why do this? Well, first of all, fractured orbs are worth 6 divines each. They only drop in cleansed areas, and they drop about 1 to 3 per cleansed area on the map in our experience, which is really solid. Now, why run Breach instead of Abyss? You could say it's just to do something different. That would be fair, but Breach Splinters are pretty valuable as well. If we look at those, they're going for 77 to a divine, which is pretty good. Catalysts are also really valuable, and Breach is just a lot less annoying and deadly than Abyss, so that's a big set of points in Breach's favor too. Alright, the next mechanic we're doing is hunting down special map bosses. We're talking about things like Citadels, Jade Isle, Mansion in the Mists, Estazante's Vault, things like that. Citadels, mainly. Alright, so why do this strategy? Uber Arbiter of Ash fragments are worth a ton of divines, 2.5 divines a piece, easily. 3 divines each at points, and you can get 2 of them from Citadel bosses. And the bosses of these special maps can drop insanely valuable support gems like Garricon's Resolve, which is 90 divines, or Rigwald's Ferocity, which is 14, and obviously Rakiata's Flow, which is 80. Yeah, so there's a ton of value to be had in killing those bosses over and over again. Then the third strategy that we're doing is Expedition and Expedition logbook farming. So why do this? Pretty simple. The Olroth boss splinters that drop in Expedition logbooks are insanely valuable now. They're going for less than 25 to a divine. Insane. You can easily average over 50 splinters per logbook. That's 2+ divs per logbook. If you can clear 20 logbooks an hour, which really isn't that hard, you're looking at 40 to 50 divines an hour. Easy. So strategies 1 and 2 really go hand in hand. Both of these strategies are enabled by the Grand Project tablet. The Grand Project is one of the most important and underrated items in all of Path of Exile 2. Whenever you use the Grand Project in a tower map, it lets you access all the maps within the radius of that tower, even if you haven't completed any nearby maps. This lets you zoom around the Atlas, hunting citadels, deadly boss maps, and corrupted areas. So that's exactly what we do. We go looking for special maps like Temporal Sandstorms and Jade Isles, we go looking for citadels, and we use the Grand Project in order to do that. Once we get there, we want to kill those bosses with a really bossing-oriented setup. So we're just doing double overseer tablets. You don't really get anything special out of the monsters in the map, and you kind of want to do everything you can to make them as not dangerous as possible. You don't want to die on the way to the boss, right? So because all of the loot is contained pretty much within the boss on those maps, overseer tablets make the most sense. They give you quantity of items dropped from map bosses and rarity of items dropped from map bosses as a pair of possible suffixes, and they also work really well with monsters have increased effectiveness, so those are kind of the primary stats that we're looking for on tablets on those setups. Here we have a couple of examples of like increased effectiveness, quantity, and rarity tablet here, increased effectiveness and quantity tablet here. These work really well for hunting down these bosses. Now there is another unique tablet that you can use in addition to some just regular overseer tablets, and that would be Visions of Paradise. This will irradiate a map, and because of the way it works, you're only able to use one of these like once, but you're able to run a Temporal Sandstorm or a Citadel or whatever 2 times. You can do one with Visions of Paradise, and then the next one you won't be able to use Visions of Paradise again. This is incredibly powerful for Citadel maps. You know, if you're getting 6 divs each time you clear a Citadel, which is attainable, then you can get 12 divs out of having a Visions of Paradise, even at a price of like 5 divs. This would be, guess, a fair trade, maybe, but they're more like 1 to 2 divs each, so they're pretty forgivingly priced considering. Now, you do have to not die. If you die and you brick the map, then the Visions of Paradise is lost and you're also not getting anything from the boss. So there is that whole gamble aspect to it, but, you know, just don't die, right? Now for strategy 2, once we get to a corruption nexus and we clear that center corruption nexus out, all the maps in the area become cleansed, and then they have extra bonuses on them. Some of them will have some really juicy bonuses, like this particular map that has a massive penalty to XP gain, but then a massive bonus to rarity of items found in the area. There are some that give extra quantity, some of them that reduce quantity and massively increase rarity, and more importantly, they just add a bunch of extra monsters into the maps. These cleansed monsters are the only source of fracturing orbs, and those are kind of the big jackpot of doing stuff in the cleansed areas. So whenever we find these, that's when we switch over to doing breach, and for us, we're just running triple breach tablets. We're just keeping it super simple, and the modifiers that we're looking for on our breach tablets are item rarity and effectiveness. Those are really what we're looking for. If we get rare monsters, that's also good, but this is like very close to a perfect tab right here. Effectiveness and rarity, we're going to get higher quantity of items dropped from all of the monsters that are capable of dropping fracturing orbs in the maps, and also, you know, higher rarity of currency dropping from them. So that's really ideal. Rare monster prefixes, like on this tablet, are also still good. Another thing that's really valuable on these breach tablets, though, is getting that chance to get an additional breach. You can get this on all 3 tablets, potentially, and with tablet scaling, you're going to guarantee an extra breach in all of your maps at least, which is awesome. Another really valuable mod is the increased quantity of breach splinters. This is just straight up more currency in all of your maps. So if you're able to get like both of those 2 suffixes on a single tablet, that's also a fantastic breach tablet. Then for the third strategy, what we're really looking for on our expedition tablets is this modifier right here. Increased quantity of expedition logbooks dropped by runic monsters in the map. There are a bunch of other really good modifiers that can multiply that nicely, like increased number of runic monster markers. If you have more monsters, then you have more things that could drop those logbooks. But really what we're trying to get out of Expedition is just as many logbooks as possible in each map. Now we can also get some benefit out of our prefixes, of course. We can use effectiveness as prefixes and rarity as prefixes is fine just for getting more currency to drop, more valuable currency, but effectiveness and runic monster markers, and then quantity of expedition logbooks dropped by runic monsters. Those are our most valuable things. And then we pair this with the unique tablet Forgotten by Time, which is still incredibly cheap, and what it does is it makes it so that all the runic monsters are duplicated, but then they spawn with half their life missing, so they're easier to kill. They work really well if you're using Herald of Ice or something like that. And getting runic monsters duplicated is like the most valuable remnant monster modifier that you could possibly get in expeditions in your maps, and you just have this on by default. So this is kind of worth giving up the prefixes and suffixes of a rare tablet to just have this always be on for all of the expeditions in your maps. It's also incredibly cheap, right? So can't really go wrong with this. All right, now let's talk about the Atlas setup that we're using. So we're using one Atlas setup for the whole thing just to keep things simple. You can find any of the other Atlases that we have on the Mobalytics guide, compiling them all. They're all great, they all work great. The standard juicing setup is probably still the best for just like maximum currency per map. You know, it's a little boring. You're taking a bunch of Waystone mod effect and not really doing anything with any mechanics, so it's not the most interesting, but it is definitely still good. But we've been playing around with shrines a lot recently, mostly because of doing it for XP farming, but they're actually really, really good for currency farming as well. If instead of taking the Enlightening Shrines node, you just swap it over to the Seeking Shrines node, you know, you get the Seeking Shrine, so you get rarity shrines much more often, and then double effect, you get like 200% increased item rarity whenever that shrine is active, which is pretty massive bonus to the amount of like good currency that's going to drop. And then like Faith and Luck, getting more shrines, getting the double effect a lot of the time, it just feels good. Like shrines actually do help with clearing through maps very quickly. Juiced up maps, the difference between running them and not running them is pretty noticeable. Other than that, we're pretty much taking all the standard stuff. Tablet effect, enigmatic intensification, unstable energies, and grueling journey, just like we have since forever. A little bit of quantity, some rarity. That's pretty much it. We basically are just taking shrines instead of Waystone mod effect, and yeah, it feels better. When it hits, it really hits, so it's definitely worth it just for that alone. So here's how we tie this all together. What we do is we run the full expedition setup, you know, triple expedition tablet, just farm in as many logbooks as possible on basic maps while moving around the Atlas trying to find towers. You run the towers with 2 expedition tablets and a grand project so that you can quickly zip to high value maps and cleanse maps. Once you get to cleansed maps, you do the juiced up breach strategy there to take advantage of all the extra monsters and rarity and as much effectiveness as you can get on all of the cleansed monsters that can drop fracturing orbs. And then for boss maps, you just do the bossing setup, Overseer tablets and a Vision of Paradise if you want for the first time, and then triple Overseer tablet for the second one, and, you know, just don't die and get lucky on the boss dropping good stuff. And that's kind of it. You can still do the temple if you want. It may be better, it might get buffed or nerfed again, and that's kind of the problem, right? You just don't know. But these 3 strats all work. There's kind of a mix of super reliable currency and super jackpot drops, so there's something for everyone, right? So ultimately, yeah, you can run any of these 3 strategies. We've kind of been bouncing back and forth between all 3 just to keep things varied and fun. Alright, that's it. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and finally, thank you to all of our channel members. If you want to support us and help us make more PoE content, consider becoming a channel member as well. Thanks for watching. Bye.